Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Gary Allen, and today we're going to be talking about case studies and how to build a $1 million law practice. As if you've been on any of these webinars before, you know that these are all eligible for credit for CLM Certified Legal Manager credit with the Association of Legal Administrators. If you're not familiar with the organization and you are a legal administrator, it's a great partner of ours, and recommend that you take a look. They provide really great education as well as community for legal administrators. So if you're interested, just type ALA into the comment or into the chat, and we'll have someone from the appropriate local chapter get in touch with you. A little bit about my story. I'm a 35-year practicing lawyer, pretty recently retired, and I was in a mid-sized firm for most of my career. I had some real problems early on in my career. I'd been at a firm for a couple years when I started practicing, and it imploded. And that happened to me a couple of years later in another firm, and I got a call from the managing partner on Saturday afternoon, was told I didn't have a job and that I still had a 6-month-old baby to feed. I was fortunate to land in a firm that was really well run and really, frankly, saved my practice, saved me as a lawyer. And so I want to share some of what I learned as part of that in this best-in-class law firm series about how to run a profitable law firm, just because I want lawyers to be happier, because it made me much happier throughout my career. Along the way, I founded Lean Law, which is a legal billing software company. So let me just help put this together. Like, why is this software guy talking to me about a $1 million practice? And what I learned over the years in my firm is that there really is a pretty simple way for law firms to achieve best-in-class financial performance. And we have a whole set of webinars to describe what exactly that means. But essentially, it allows you to triple your profit from an average firm and put, over the course of one lawyer's career, an additional $8 million in gross profits in your pocket. And it involves three things. We won't get into these in great detail, but it's about efficient processes, and we recommend that's where to start to get your firm going. Productive people, that's kind of what we're talking about today. And then a strong product market fit. And where does Lean Law fit into all of that? We're in the efficient processes bucket. And just a little bit about how you achieve efficient processes in your firm. First step is to map the most important processes, those ones you do all the time, the ones that if you automate them, you're going to save a lot of time and money. And it also allows you to work in the way that you want. Then secondly, we highly recommend starting with industry standards. This is especially true for small to mid-sized law firms. And almost all of you are using Microsoft or Microsoft 365. Soon you will almost all be using Microsoft 365. It's an incredibly powerful tool and will actually do most of what your practice management software, all-in-one practice management softwares will do, we think, better. It requires some configuration, and there are consultants like Arrow Consultants who are listed here who can help you create a highly configurable, sophisticated case and practice management system using Microsoft 365, SharePoint, et cetera, by itself. Well, that leaves your accounting and billing functions. The industry standard for small to medium-sized business is QuickBooks Online. And Lean Law is a tool that customizes QuickBooks Online for law firms. That's all we do. So we think we do the best job of anybody in the industry. So if you're interested in that type of setup, we would love to talk with you. Finally, once you once you've got those workflows in place, you need to communicate them and reinforce those new workflows. You've set the foundation for a best-in-class performing firm. This, as I mentioned, this is part of the best-in-class mid-sized law firm webinar series. Here's what we've done so far this year and what we have planned for the first half of the year. We did 6 months worth of these last year, covering topics from a financial report card to compensation to personnel issues, a number of things. We've had some great webinars on AI. So to start the year, as we go forward, we're going to talk about design thinking, better products and services for your firm, accounting, marketing, all the things you need to know to achieve that best-in-class performance. All right, so let's turn to today's subject, how to build $1 million practice. So who should care about this? We think there are 3 categories of people. First, the managing partners. Of course, you're running the firm. You want your partners to be as productive as possible. You lawyers who aspire to have a big successful practice. And then I think most importantly and least intuitively, the legal administrators who are on the call. The partners are the economic engines of your firm. And this really is the heart of your staff development strategy from a legal standpoint. And so the more that you understand this and can help lawyers implement it, that's how you increase your value to the firm and you become a strategic, trusted advisor for your law firm. So what is $1 million practice really? I mean, it's not a number. It's not Austin Powers, $1 million. There's no magic about that number. With inflation, maybe that should be more than $1 million at this point. But what it really is are some characteristics of your practice that you should keep that are representative of a highly successful practice. And those are, you're a recognized expert in your field. You command a premium rate because of that and because of other things that you do. You have loyal clients and you are a trusted advisor to them, not just a commodity who does tasks for them. There's sustained demand for your services. You're a known quantity. The work keeps coming in. You have built a strong team. It's quite difficult to build $1 million practice if you're trying to do it all by yourself. You have to have quite the high billing rate in order to make that work. So you have to build both a legal and support team around you who can help support that practice. And then you have to be able to delegate and to build scalable systems. Not at the level of a manufacturing company or anything, but enough that you can manage a high demand of services. And here's one of my most important messages today. I don't think that the ability to create a $1 million practice is a rare commodity. I think there are many, if not everyone, who has that capacity if they want to do it. And really the point here is that rainmaking is a natural and normal function of practicing law over time. Some people never really quite get comfortable with it, but for most people, this comes with time. And I think it's important to understand kind of how lawyers evolve to that point to set appropriate expectations for yourself and for the lawyers in your firm. So there really are some distinct phases in a lawyer's career. So the first 5 years, you're really just learning how to practice. You don't come out of law school ready to really work for clients. And so over the first few years, you're really doing an apprenticeship in large part for most people. Second 5 years, you're really learning to manage matters. Now you're working directly with the clients, you're developing strategy, you're executing that. You can handle a significant matter from end to end. And here's where there's kind of a disconnect, I think, in a lot of firms, in that um, you're probably not going to be a rainmaker at this phase in your career. That's quite rare. Yet, this is when many firms are considering people for partnership. Unfortunately, that track keeps getting longer, and many firms set an expectation that a lawyer has a book of business at this point. Yeah, maybe it's appropriate that they've attracted a few clients just to know there is some ability to do that and some willingness. But I don't think it's fair to most lawyers to say, "Oh, you should have a full book of business and be taking care of yourself at that point." Um, I don't think that you got the gray hair or the gravitas in most cases in order to do that. Um, at about 10 to 15 years in a lawyer's career, that's when you really start rainmaking. But you might not necessarily be generating all of your own work. Now, of course, all of this assumes you're in a firm and not, a solo. If you're a solo, you're generating what you're generating. But even then, you probably aren't generating the kinds of matters and the amount of work that you really want until you're 15 years or so outside or out of school. And then from 15 to 20 years, that's kind of when you'd expect to have a full book. And after 20 years, okay, now you're delegating a lot. You've probably got some junior associates and partners working for you, and you can start to get that big book that's multiples of the work that you're doing yourself. But I don't know how many lawyers achieve along this same time frame. People you might never have thought who were, one of my partners was he was a runner for the firm before he went to law school, and now he's a highly successful partner with a huge book of business. Okay, so this is an important part too, which is to think a little introspection on, if you seem to be struggling with rainmaking, what's holding you back? And what I see over and over again in lawyers is a lot of fear. So the first kind of way that manifests itself, and we tend to be fearful people, or kind of nervous and all of that, as just as a matter of course. I know I was. And the first way that it shows itself is that you cling to work, that it's like, oh, I've got this work to do. I can't give it away because if I give it away, then there won't be any more clients that come in, and I won't be busy, and I will have a financial disaster, etc. Um, that's nonsense. If the earlier and better you can delegate to others who can do the work at lower rates, the better off you're going to be, and the more you will have the opportunity to do the work that you want. More on that later. Secondly, keeping your rates too low. That you may be in a very competitive marketplace where you have to really watch what other lawyers are doing. I'd say that is probably you have not established your niche well enough, if that's your real issue. But a lot of that just comes from fear. Again, like, oh, these clients are going to fire me. I haven't raised my rates in 3 years, and if they see a higher rate, they'll take their work elsewhere. There may be a little discomfort when you raise the rate, but you got better over those 3 years. You developed more strategic ability, ability to, solve matters in ways you couldn't when you were a less experienced lawyer. So don't be afraid to bump those rates up. And then if there's price sensitivity, that's when you can start to delegate. Another way that fear shows itself is in taking everything that any kind of matter that comes through the door. So, being afraid to go, nope, I only do this kind of law because I'm really good at that. Uh, and, but I'm going to take this other thing just because I'm maybe not totally busy now. Um, I don't think nobody achieves a $1 million practice doing that. Now, you may take the matter and delegate it to an associate or, somebody else in your firm who does something closer to that, but you should be focused on what you do best. And then finally, hanging on to toxic clients or incompatible practices. I wish it was easier to identify toxic clients when they show up in the door. I could have avoided some expensive and painful mistakes over the course of my career. There's a saying that the best client is the one you didn't take, and try to bring that into your mind every time you bring on a new client. That is there something, any flags here that are going to make me, regret taking on this client? Then fine, I wanted to talk a little bit about incompatible practices within your firm, just because we had a notable example of that in my firm. At one point, we took on a partner who uh, did employment contingency work and was otherwise a business law firm. And, that created all kinds of problems. One, because the economics are really different between a contingency firm and a, billable hour business firm. And then secondly, business clients really hate plaintiffs' employment matters just because it's very personal. So, we had all kinds of trouble with that. And that was a very happy divorce when that happened. So watch that in your firm, and make sure that, while you don't all have to be in perfect sync, at least you don't want those toxic practices. Second thing that holds people back in a big way is really not understanding your unique skills. And lawyers have very broad range of superpowers when it comes down to it. Um, when I started, I tried litigation. I'm too much of a perfectionist for that. It drove me crazy and made me so uptight. Um, I found transactional work to be boring because it didn't engage my brain that requires complex problems to solve. Um, and so I was kind of really struggling with that. Wound up in environmental law and land use, which both have technical aspects, some interesting political implications, which was a good fit for me. It would be terrible for a lot of other people. So, if you're hating the practice of law 3, 5 years out, start thinking about how you might be able to make a little pivot rather than just getting out of the profession, which a lot of people do. And finally, I want to talk about lack of trust. Um, and that is, that you're so great, you're the expert, and you can't possibly delegate something to someone else because uh, they can't possibly make the client happy and do what's needed. And that is also nonsense. My mentee exceeded me so dramatically in a lot of ways that it's not even funny. And I consider that a great compliment that she went far beyond me. Um, and, Da Vinci said that poor is the apprentice who does not exceed the master. Um, have faith in the people you've hired. If you've hired the right people, they will make you proud and give you room to do your greatness. All right, so let's talk about the foundations of $1 million practice. And I want to focus mostly on the bottom line here, which is honesty and transparency, professionalism, and confidentiality. These things are obvious, but they are absolutely necessary. I mean, never compromise your integrity in any way, or not everything falls apart from there. So, just a reminder that, that solid ethical base is 100% necessary to achieve $1 million practice. Then the next layer is upon responsiveness and communication. I'll talk more about those in a second. And it's only then that your legal expertise and track record really matter. If you haven't built these other things, you're going to have a heck of a time building your big successful practice. As I mentioned, those soft skills, responsiveness. I don't know a lot of lawyers who've achieved $1 million practice who aren't responsive to clients. Your clients have given you important matters that are usually pretty scary for them. So when they're not hearing from you, they are filling that void with the worst possible alternatives in their mind. So you need to keep working with them to make sure they have a comfort level with what you're doing and understand where things are going. And that gives them comfort. And that's really what they want. They want to sleep at night as much as anything else. And then communication and directness. And this is really easy to fall down on as a lawyer. Like you have a contract that you're working on, you put your head down, you write the contract, and then a week or two later, when that's done, you send that to the client. And meanwhile, they've been freaking out because they haven't heard from you. So get that communication going in a way that's so they understand and you've got clear expectations and are meeting those. And then I want to say a word for directness, and this is something I wish I had learned better early in my career. You do have to tell clients a lot of things they don't want to hear as a lawyer, maybe not as much as a doctor, but not far off. So the more I'm a big fan of being very direct, not trying to pump up expectations and, oh, everything's going to be great. Oh, we're going to get through this and win, but to just be very direct and honest with people. You'll be surprised how much they appreciate it, even if they may not want to hear the news. To have $1 million practice, you need to have a niche. I think I mentioned this earlier, that if you if you're just a general practice lawyer, you're probably not going to be, you're not going to be able to build a big practice, just because people don't want a lawyer. They want the lawyer who can solve their problem. And if they can afford them, they're going to, pick an expert. So you've got to figure out how to do this in your firm. And then if you're in a bigger firm, that's probably fairly natural kind of evolution, but a lot of times it isn't. I mean, I've had to wiggle into different niches at different times in my career, and it's always been it's been really important to do that. I wanted to give a little plug for this book. Hope everybody can see that. See, yes, okay. It's sort of blurred. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And it's a business book. It's not a legal book, but it's got a really compelling concept in it to me, which is, there's of all the work you do, there's 20% of it, and this is true of lawyers, I think, but true of like all professionals. So like 20% of that work that really winds your watch and is the most profitable and where you're just killing it. And then there's 80% of what you do, which you have to do, but it's, a lot lower value. And, it may be just administrative work or, little things on it, little details on the case that have to be wrapped up. And the 10X versus 2X idea is that you figure out what that 20% is, and you figure out how to get all the rest of it off your plate. So, that's either by delegating, or sending, referring it to other lawyers, just not doing it if you can get away with that. But take a bold step to say, no, I know what I do really well. I'm just going to do that. And that's really hard to do, but it's a really great exercise to go, okay, how much of this kind of marginal stuff can I get off my plate so I can just do what I want to do? If you're going to have a niche, you've got to have some ability to develop authority. And that can come in any number of different forms. And this is a place where, again, I really want to say, know yourself and understand what's going to work for you and what's really going to build your practice. So for me, one of the ways I did that was I wrote a handbook on, first I wrote one in California on California environmental law. And then I, with others in my firm, wrote one on land use law. And we did that to make it so we'd have something we could take and teach at CLEs without having to rewrite the materials every time. And then as an internal reference. And then we just threw it up on the firm website and learned not too much later that every planner in the state had downloaded that and had it sitting on their desk because no one else was creating a resource like that. So that may be a unique case, but it's I have pretty good ability to synthesize information into something like that people can understand. So that was easy for me to do that and became a referral source, a source of authority, and help build my practice. Now, that's not going to be for everybody. Some of you are much better at developing relationships and especially with people who are going to refer you business. Do that really well. Maybe that's combined with a content strategy if you need to show your expertise at some level, but figure out what that is. And I think this soul searching part of this is the hardest part, because you really have to understand your unique skills. How are people going to best respond to you so that they're going to make that big step at some point and go, yes, I'm going to trust you with my most important legal matter. Okay, so let's talk a bit about marketing. And I'm a bit of a contrarian, I think, when it comes to law firm marketing. And here's kind of why I do that is, when you think about law firm clients and all the thousands of clients I work with, they're looking for somebody they trust. This is usually something that's really important to them and kind of scary a lot of the time. So they want that feeling of trust when they retain you. And most of them don't know how to choose a lawyer. Now, if you're working with business clients, that may be there may be less of that, but they don't know how to go out and assess the different skills of different lawyers. And I think that is true of a lot of business clients. Like, all right, I've never had an antitrust matter that I've had to work with, and how do I pick a lawyer who's going to be right for me to do that? So mostly people ask people they know, like, who do you know who does this? And so you've got a huge bias in the marketplace about referral-based marketing. People trust other, they're going to talk to somebody they trust and say, do you know a lawyer you trust? So, however many ads you may have out there, however good your website is, however, what great content you create, you're going to have a really hard time creating that trust to gain that client retention. So, it's not that it's impossible. It's just that you're swimming upstream, in my experience. So then the second thing you've got to know is it's really different to get clients for business to business clients versus business to consumer clients. So if your practice is, real estate law, that's one thing, especially if it's, more on the development side as opposed to individuals needing real estate lawyers. If you're in a consumer practice like trusts and estates or family law of some kind, or more of a business consumer role, you may have to look at more of a mass strategy that's got more digital components and so on. But business to business, that is highly referral based, and because you've got a smaller group of lawyers doing the work and a smaller group of potential clients, it's much more, you can kind of go with the flow as far as developing the relationships and getting referrals that way, as opposed to there's this huge group of consumers who occasionally need a lawyer, and how do they find you when they need that? Let's talk about websites for a minute. And this is another B2B versus B2C question in large part, that your website, when you're a business to business lawyer, it's a validator. It is not some place where somebody's going to say, oh, I have a $100 million Superfund matter. I'm going to look up environmental lawyers on my computer, and I'm going to read all their website material, and then I'm going to click and accept that representation that way. Doesn't happen. Instead, they've talked to the people they know, they've Googled you, they've done all this research in the background, and then they come to the website for validation that, okay, you're an expert, you're going to be able to handle their matter. And so those of you who are in that kind of practice, think about that, that's what you want to, think about putting yourself in that client's position, and then, figuring out what would they want to see in order to go, oh, I'm very comfortable with this person. I think when I look at that, especially now that I'm in business as opposed to practicing law, it's like, I think there's way too many lawyer resumes out there that have, what courts you're admitted to, and where you went to law school, and, were you on the law review or order of the coif, all that sort of thing. Clients don't care about that. I mean, that may show, oh, this is somebody who's, well-practiced lawyer, but, how can you address the problems that you're and the questions that person is likely to come onto your site and talk about? How are you going to approach the matter? How are you going to communicate with them? How are you, how do you handle a matter that in a way that is going to give that potential client comfort? So, there's an art to that, but definitely worth thinking about getting out of the norm when that happens. Now, there are other websites where you're trying to actually generate leads. I mean, if you're a personal injury law firm, you're trying to get as many, good cases in the door as you can. Some of those people will find you by searching the web. I would say you should not neglect the referral part of all of that. Build as strong a referral network as you can with other attorneys and within the community. To the extent that you use your website as a lead generator, there's an art to this, and not just anybody who builds websites is going to be good at that kind of thing. You need a strong CRM behind it, and mind your money very carefully, because it's easy to spend a lot on that kind of thing, especially when you're talking about digital advertising. You can just burn money like you wouldn't believe doing that. So try to do as much as you can with methods that are cheap before you head off in any other directions. And as I mentioned at the outset, both traditional marketing like advertising, billboards might be, good for certain types of practices, but for a lot of them, you're just doing basic branding that isn't going to get you a whole lot. And again, digital marketing is changing all the time. And what we have noticed in our company, our software company, is that the market's getting very saturated and very expensive. So it's really hard to generate an attorney or a return using digital ads. Yes, so be careful on that front. Let's just talk about referrals for a minute and how to build a strategic referral network. So you want as large and relevant a network as you can, and that might be directly with potential clients or with people who will send you clients. For example, my firm built its early success on relationships with commercial real estate brokers. It was a real estate transactional law firm to begin with. And so a developer would come to town, they would hire a broker to help them buy a piece of land, and they'd ask the broker, okay, we need a law firm to help us put our deal together. And we would get the referrals from those folks. And of course, we would reciprocate with referrals for those brokers when we had the opportunity. I heard a really good way of putting how this works, because if you don't know how to build a referral network, if you just go up and say, hey, will you refer me some work? And you don't have a relationship with that person, they may be polite about it, but you're probably not going to get those referrals. What the best way to build a network like this, or any kind of relationship that's going to help generate business for you, you give them something of value 3 times. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be a little article that you wrote. It could be an introduction to someone. It could be anything along those lines. But just be prepared to do that 3 times. And then you ask them for something. And at that point, there's some feeling of obligation to do that. And the more it's genuine, and the more you really have something going with this person, the easier it is to develop those kinds of relationships. So giving is the beginning of receiving in those things. The last thing I wanted to talk about here is, are there synergistic relationships in your firm? And that's important when you choose a firm and when you're looking at your firm and how do we develop this? How do we make it work better? So my firm started with commercial real estate expertise, or commercial, just real estate development expertise. And as it developed, it attracted, we hired lawyers who were in adjacent practice areas. So sometimes you need a a lawyer who, let's see, like who did construction contracts, or water law, or environmental law, or land use law, like I did. And lobbying was another one that was very helpful for us. And so, the work originally may have started within the real estate practice, but ultimately all of these practice areas generated their own work and generated the potential to refer work to others in the firm. So it's a really strong synergistic relationship and a competitive advantage in our market, because not all of our competitors had that breadth and that depth of the bench. If you don't have that in your firm, that can be, that, and you're just all, sort of office sharing with separate practices. You might want to think about who you can bring in who would be more synergistic, because that can be a really powerful way of practice development. All right, let's talk for a minute about sales, because just sort of how you close that deal. Frankly, this was never that hard for me. And I think the reason was that the client is often very far into their decision-making process when they talk to you. By the time you're talking with a potential client, they've looked you up on the internet, they've looked at your website, they probably talked to somebody, so they're not just shopping normally. And so they are, pretty close to ready to hire you in most cases, in my experience. And so at that point, your big job is to shut up and listen. Um, and I didn't always do that so well, but if you think you're going to listen 80% on that call and then talk 20%, that's going to be really valuable, because you want to understand what's really important to the client, understand their business, understand their personal situation, understand the matter that they want you to undertake, any kind of financial, cost consciousness, and any of those things, so that and ask really good questions as you go through that, so that when you're ready to talk, you can really address that client's concerns directly. So that client's going to feel seen and heard. They're going to feel like you know what you're talking about because you've listened to what they care about. And just understand that clients care about their problems, not about your diploma or your war stories or your 20 years of experience or anything like that. It's kind of like you want to show, not tell, your expertise within the limits that you can prior to accepting an engagement. All right, so no discussion of this kind would be complete without talking about, okay, so we're going for the brass ring to have $1 million practice. So how do you balance that with your family? And I'm talking about this a little bit from a point of failure, because I found this to be really hard. If you want to be responsive to your clients, that can lead to missing a lot at home, which is it's time you can't replace. So, and it's hard. So my advice from a point of failure is get help. And your likely place to get help is from your family. So, this is a great place for an honest conversation about what you want your life balance to be. And then, asking for your family to help you set those expectations about family time is important as your time in court or your time working on a deal. And it's got to be the most important thing somehow. and set those expectations and get their help to make it happen somehow. I had one talk with one of the people I interviewed, had a really good practice that they had, which is he tracked all his time, billable, non-billable, and home time. And what he told me is, if you don't know how you're spending your time, you don't know how you're spending your life. And it's like, boy, pretty hard to argue with that. And, I think he's done an okay job of creating that balance. I mean, probably not perfect like any of us, but I'd suggest that practice if that resonates with you. Then the final thought here is about sabbaticals. My firm had a sabbatical program. we were paid based on production. So basically this amounted to a forced savings program where, you'd set money aside, the firm would set money aside that you had earned based on your fee income. And then you could spend it on a sabbatical, and you're expected to do that every few years for, at least 6 weeks, and ideally 12 weeks, so a 3-month sabbatical. And I would say that program has been a success, and it was always hard to fit it in, but I appreciated all those times that I got, and it made it easier to live with the difficulties of law practice, because it's not an easy way to make a living. Okay, so let me just go. Let's talk about the case studies and some of the people that we've been weaving into the conversation. All of these are anonymous. I'm not naming names. If you're a local person, maybe you can spot some of them, but hopefully not. So we have one person in our firm who was, a really great technical lawyer, but not necessarily a gregarious, outgoing person. And he did a really great job of building on some expertise he brought into practicing law. So he was an architect briefly before practicing law. And when he came in, he knew a lot of architects. And so he developed a niche in architectural contracts. I don't know if you're familiar with the set of standard architectural contracts, but he learned all of the different ways that those could be changed and modified to meet the needs of a construction project, and became our expert internally, and then became the expert in our market on that particular thing. Probably could have had a decent practice just doing that, but he also expanded to other tiny little niches that you wouldn't even think were niches. And, we're in Boise, Idaho, not a big city. So, to think that there's a niche in historic preservation, for example, or public-private finance, you might even not even think that exists, but it did, and, helped create different aspects of his practice. Now, of course, this person was also getting a lot of practice just handling real estate transactions. So now can handle all aspects of a very sophisticated real estate transaction. He was and has a large successful practice, all the work he'd ever want to do. If there was one area of where he has not done as well, as he doesn't necessarily have a mentee that he's brought in to delegate to. And I think that's, that would be an opportunity if he wanted to grow his practice even more. But the takeaway is he built on his unique skills and used those internal networks, and did great work, went really deep on his practice, and built that into a great success. So another lawyer I know who's been really successful, um, I think his real superpower is not afraid to go what he wants, to go after what he wants, or to ask clients very directly for their business. So this guy started in a small litigation firm, um, and then moved into a larger firm where he was doing litigation. And he was a good litigator. He was, definitely liked to argue, and, that seemed like a good fit for him. But he decided he wanted to do more commercial lending, and had that opportunity, could feed off of another lawyer in the firm that he went into, went really deep in that and became an expert on a particular kind of commercial lending transaction, very niche, and built a huge practice out of that. And then moved into an AmLaw 100 firm, and pivoted his practice to more working on securities work and other work for private equity and VC firms. And what really struck me about him is he would go right up to a potential client and just say, "I want your business. How do I get it?" And many lawyers are too shy to do that, or I don't know what keeps us from doing that. But it was very successful, because that's what that's an attractive approach from a lawyer. Oh, you actually care about what I want, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do to get that work. And he built a huge practice out of that. I have a good friend who is, I would call him the lawyer's lawyer. So he gets lots of referrals from other lawyers on complex and technical matters. Came from a nonprofit academic background, immediately established a niche in water law, which he had done before. And but just he's not the kind of lawyer you're going to hire if you want an 80% answer and it's cheap. But if you're ready to go, your matter requires you to go deep and really understand the law and the why of the law, there's nobody better. And he was able to do that in water law, and this developed other specialties in road law, land use, certain types of land use, in constitutional law generally, and just did a tremendous job of being able to go deep and just to provide the best analysis that anybody could, and develop that reputation both inside the firm and everywhere. Now he's another one who never really quite, I don't know if trusted is the right word, but never really developed a mentee or a partner or associate under him, who could take some of that burden off. So he works a lot, and really, I think could, that would be a place to get some relief from all the work in his practice. Then finally, I wanted to talk about my own mentee, who came to our firm as a water lawyer who was working for a solo attorney. We didn't really have a spot for that, so she started working in land use and with me. One thing she did very early on was she developed some really great community connections, particularly in economic development world, and always had a superpower of just building this quiet confidence and trust with clients. As sort of her practice grew up and started to meet or exceed mine, and as I moved out into the software world, she found an associate who was her mentee. This is a really good, I mean, has, I think, 4 or more lawyers working for her now, most of whom she has trained in some level, because she's really good at that kind of mentorship and delegation. But she found a workhorse as uh, uh, her first mentee, who she could just hand off work and hand off work, which allowed her to, continually do this 10x thing and keep moving in on the work that she did best. So built an enormous practice in the process, and she did no direct marketing in that process. Our market shifted a little bit so that um, the kind of developers who were coming in had a broker on their staff and maybe a real estate lawyer. So they started calling, the land use lawyer was the first call that they made. And so she started to be the gateway to a lot of the real estate work. Plus the firm's competitive advantage in having the full set of practice areas and deep bench uh, helped her to create an enormous practice. But, did not do a lot of schmoozing in the process. So great success story there. All right, so I want to spend the last few minutes here talking to those of you who are legal administrators. I'm sorry. I think we've kind of talked through my practice about how I moved into environmental law and land use. And it's just a story of kind of knowing yourself and adapting and delegating to achieve what you need. I was never a great marketer, I don't think, but still found a way to build a large and successful practice. Okay, so I want to spend the last few minutes here talking about legal admins and what you can do to help support people who have or are building $1 million practice. You can't do everything for a lawyer in this respect. The lawyers have to want it. But I want you to understand kind of what sort of things they need support in, so you can go in and, if they're not doing it already, make suggestions, help them get on a good path. And part of this is understanding your lawyer's superpowers. Are they like me? Should they be writing handbooks, or should they be out networking and meeting people and taking advantage of those kind of skills? Here are some things that you might be able to do to help. One is schedule some weekly business development time, or at least if you're the firm admin, the person's assistant would do this, however you're staffing that in your firm. Help prepare and maintain a networking contact list, drafting follow-up emails for meetings, and monitoring and tracking leads. Now, you can automate a lot of this in M365, or you can bring on a CRM tool of some kind to help with this if it's a lot of work, but a lot of times it's not a super high volume thing, so it can be done manually just fine. If your lawyer is good at content, you might be able to assist with blog posts and social media and newsletters. Especially now with ChatGPT, you can help get a really good start on things like that. And that can be a great help to, keep a lawyer on schedule doing that sort of thing. Also coordinating speaking opportunities. And mostly I'm suggesting that you can be a little bit proactive doing this, because lawyers always want to have their heads down working in their cases. A little tap on the shoulder to say, hey, let's do some consistent marketing to keep that part of your practice growing. You can help track progress to schedule a quarterly client check-in, because 85% of your work is going to come from existing clients, not from new clients. You can provide reports on referrals and how that is going and where the new work came from. And then again, especially with ChatGPT, you can help research competitors and industry trends, keep lawyers up on that. All right, so we're right about at the hour. We've got some, the key takeaways here for the lawyers in particular. Build on your unique skills. You're going to do this a little differently from somebody else. Believe that you can, and you will. Delegate early and effectively in your practice. If it helps make time to do more marketing and helps you do more interesting work. And then leverage your staff to help maximize your growth. Get somebody who can, help manage those practice management or practice development things that need to happen for you to hit your goals. Okay, so we're right at the hour. I don't know if we have any questions in the queue. I don't see any in the chat. And I don't see any questions. Molly, do you have any questions?
I don't see any, no.
Okay. All right, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me if you think of something after the webinar. I hope this has been useful for everybody, and we will hopefully see you next time on our next webinar, which is going to be about how to use design thinking to help you produce better products and services, maybe do some things that get beyond the billable hour. So we'll hope to see you on February 27th for our next webinar. Thanks, everybody, and we are adjourned.